Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/Malicious Compliance. In today's episode, tenant asking landlord, me, to be more professional. You need a call back first thing in the morning? No problem. Excuse me? You want me to wash the windows? Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Tenant asking landlord, me, to be more professional. I am a small-time landlord, with just 4 tenants. Earlier this year, I had 2 sisters that didn't respond to my requests to add of the gal's husband to the lease, though he was living with them. Not a big deal, but did I mention the pit bull they also brought home, without permission? I do allow pets, and had previously approved their other dog. I asked nicely in person and by email in the months leading up to the malicious compliance. They also did not respond when I asked if they were happy there, and wanted to renew their lease for the following year. I asked again. Then I emailed them notice that I would start showing the unit 2 days later. I try to be a nice landlord. I do. They had a newborn as well, so I scheduled all of the showings within a 2-hour window on the same night so I could be in their space as little as possible. Also, because they had not responded, and it was now serious crunch time for getting another tenant and my spouse worked all the following 2 weeks during evening showing hours, I had the delightful inconvenience of bringing my 2- and 6-year-old children with me to the showings. Because I'm not a corporation, I'm a small-time family landlord with kids. Try to imagine how difficult it is to conduct business meetings with 2 kids, right? Then imagine staggering showings every 15 minutes, with prospective tenants who are also bringing their own kids. Just to further clutter your imagination, this is an 800 square foot 2-bedroom apartment with a cozy entryway. So I arrive with my 2 kids, to find that my tenants are still at home, along with the husband, the newborn and the other sister's boyfriend. So that's 7 people in a small kitchen already. Then the first prospective tenants start arriving. Husbands, wives, with kids, and some showing up early, so there's 2 sets of them. That's 14 people in a small kitchen. And I'm a mom. I have magical powers. So I'm holding my toddler, my daughter is safely under the dining table coloring, and I'm chatting with the prospective tenants and directing traffic while my actual tenants prepare to depart. If you didn't know this already, it's common practice in the US to leave the premises during real estate or apartment showings. This was their first apartment, so I actually emailed them ahead of time to let them know what is generally expected at showings, e.g. a relatively tidy apartment, and that they can leave for their own convenience. They do eventually leave, after the boyfriend tells a prospective tenant that he, in fact, also lives there. And I carry on with an exhausting scheduling of showings. And have my new tenants all picked out and lease signed by the next day. Awesome, right? The next night, I get a voicemail from the husband, who is not my tenant. I saved it, and just listened to it again, because it still gives me that same delightful shiver of malicious compliance. In his voicemail, he told me how awful it was that my children touched his infant's things. They didn't, because I keep my kids entertained with magical mommy toys, but prospective tenants also brought children, and how they had to sterilize everything to keep their infant from being sick, and how inconvenient it was to have showings with only 2 days' notice, and how very unprofessional I was to bring my children, and asked if I could just be more professional in the future. You can hear it, can't you? The deep shiver of malicious compliance vibrating through my offended being. The next morning, I started issuing professional lease violation notices. One for the extra residents of the unit, hubby and boyfriend. One for the extra dog. And a few additional ones for building concerns I noted during the showings. They ignored the violation notice, which I sent by certified mail and, thoughtfully, also by email. I decided to be even more professional 30 days later, and issue a 5-day notice to vacate. And I called their mom, who is their emergency contact, as an eviction notice is an emergency. Did I mention that their lease was due to end just a few weeks later? But it would be unprofessional of me to let these violations slide until then. 3 days later, they'd magically sent me all the information I'd requested, removed the other dog, licensed the first dog, gotten the required pet insurance. They moved out on their lease termination date and skipped out on their last electric bill and left the unit in damaged condition. Despite my professional security deposit disposition statement and request for payment, they ignored those notices until I stated I would proceed to small claims court by X date for the total due beyond their security deposit. On X date, they replied stating they didn't think it was fair that they should have to cover damages to the unit or pay any more money toward their utility bill. Yep. 2 months later, there we were in the lobby of the courthouse, sitting across from each other on uncomfortable waiting room benches. They're laughing among themselves about how they're going to get their full security deposit back. And I'm quietly reviewing my presentation notes to the judge and my sizable stack of evidence, photographs, videos. This was my first time in court, but I wasn't laughing. I was preparing. 1 hour later, we're back in the lobby, and their mom is trying to write me a check for the full amount of the judgment. She doesn't have a pen. Her kids don't have a pen. I, however, have a pen. I cheerfully offer my pen. She writes the check and hands it to me, and, wait. I hold out my hand again. Got my pen back too. I was so proud of myself for not saying any of the sassy things in my head in that moment. You know why? Because I was being professional, as I'd been from the moment he'd left that voicemail. As a last note, I do acknowledge that it would have been better if I hadn't brought my children. However, if you have kids, you'll understand that sometimes they simply have to go where you go. Absolutely delicious malicious compliance. This ended well. I know cases where the landlord lost even though the damage exceeded the deposit. Perfect. I give it a perfect score of 5 out of 7. By far the best ranking system on the web. It's interesting if you consider how all these small things you'd normally let slide really add up if you decide to go by the book. Absolutely, exactly. I have another tenant moving out now where we'll also end up in court, unfortunately. And I'm photographing and noting every single thing that is an allowable repair, as well as my time spent repairing/cleaning/supervising contractors/etc. The final amount due will be a couple of thousand, I suspect. And I'll be professional every step of the way, and exactly by the book. My landlord managed to take $400 on bullshit charges. We mowed lawn the day before we left, vacuumed and shampooed the carpet, and had informed him our first week that our back door lock was broken, so we replaced it and gave him a key. Those non-problems added $400 to outbill, and he had never added stairs to the 6-foot drop to the backyard, so it was unusable. Fuck you, Tyler. Just curious, in your state, is it legal to give only 5 days to vacate, particularly if they're on a lease? My mother was once given 3 days to vacate. She'd complained to code compliance that the AC didn't work. This was Texas in the summer, and she didn't have a lease, and we fought it because in Texas you're required to give 30 days. If you didn't know this already, it's common practice in the US to leave the premises during real estate or apartment showings. No. I'm always there, doing something out of the way, to keep an eye on my things. Not uncommon. And I'd sure as hell make sure to be there if you scheduled multiple showings with children coming. Kids often unintentionally have sticky fingers. You need a call back first thing in the morning? No problem. Many years ago, I had a very demanding client at work. I was traveling on an assignment, and while I was gone, this person was trying to reach me. She became very upset when she was informed that I was unavailable and insisted that I return her call first thing in the morning. This was a Thursday, and the next day was Good Friday. I happened to be aware that she would be off work that day. But we aimed to please. The following morning, I was booked to fly home on a flight that departed at 6 a.m. While sitting in the airport, waiting for my flight at 5:15 a.m., I returned her call. the sleepy confusion in her voice as I explained that I understood that she was urgently trying to reach me, so I wanted to make sure to call her before I boarded my flight and became unavailable, made my day. You mean she wasn't in the office already dealing with this emergency? I am shocked. Well played. I had to resort to calling a guy at 2 a.m. because he would call to sell me a deck in the afternoon. I worked third shift and told him that a couple of times. I finally just told him I might be interested and asked if I could call him back at my convenience. I now had his number. Hence the 2 a.m. call. I advised him I didn't want a new deck. He stopped calling. Be careful what you wish for. Or demand in that case. Nicely done there. It's amazing how clients think they own your entire life just because they pay you a pittance for a service. Do you get a say in if you can stop a client if they get too much? Excuse me? You want me to wash the windows? This happened more than 3 decades ago, when I was at the beginning of my working career. As a youth, I didn't really know upwards from downwards, and I was just happy that I had a steady job and a salary. The job itself didn't matter, as long as I had a job, I was happy. I was an operator of the production machine, which didn't really need higher education to operate, but it required a person to watch over it in case of some production hiccup or another error happened. Mostly the machine run just fine, and the operator's job was to put in material or parts into it every now and then and to watch over it. And that was what I did. All in all, very simple entry-level job. This one day one of my co-workers came to me and told me that our manager required me to wash the windows of the factory today. I was kind of dumbfounded for a moment, and then I laughed and told him sure. At first I thought it was a joke. I told him that I have to watch over my own work here, so is he sure about this? He told me that yes, that's what he was told to tell me. Well, I didn't quite believe what I had heard, and next lunch break I went to look for the manager and asked if it was so. The manager told me that the windows are dirty and haven't been washed for years, so it's time to clean them. And that I should start right away. I was just okay. He was naturally being cheap since he didn't want to hire someone outsider to do it. And wanted to use me as a youngster to do the extra work. I went back to my work spot, thought a little what to do and where to start. Where to get the equipment, etc. Then I turned the machine I was operating off and began to work with windows. The factory, while it wasn't too large, it wasn't small either. And some of the windows were pretty high up, so it wasn't quick work either at cases. But I was told what to do and so I complied. My estimate was that it would take at least several days if not whole week to finish the job. After second day someone noticed that the parts were beginning to pile up at my spot, which was of course because there was no one there doing the process and the machine was offline. On third day someone found me washing the windows at one corner of the factory and asked what the hell I was doing? Everyone were worried where I was and why the production line had stalled up since no one was operating the machine where I was supposed to be. They practically pulled me back to the manager and told what had happened. I explained that I had been doing what I was told earlier, and I was about halfway done. And that I can't be in 2 places at once. There were other managers present as well, and they all turned to look at the one which had instructed me at first place. We workers were told to leave, and I was told to go to my original job and start up the machine ASAP. And that if I want, I can do as much overtime as I want until the production quota has been reached back. I believe they had some discussion among the managers behind the closed doors after we left. It took for a while, but I netted nice overtime bonus from that in the end. They also hired someone to wash rest of the windows as well. As soon as I read "turn the machine off," I thought, good lad. Exactly as expected. Good on you. That was my favorite part. Safe malicious compliance is the best. It wasn't the co-workers being stupid with demands. Well done, kid. I've seen this sort of thing happen a fair bit. Managers think they're pulling one over by having someone they already pay for skilled labor doing unskilled jobs on the side, when what they're actually doing is paying triple or more for the unskilled jobs while pulling them away from where they're really needed. This only works if the employees spend significant time on standby anyway, and can drop their make-work task on a moment's notice when they need to do their actual job. I thought you were just gonna leave it running and it would break down on its own with noon to fix it. But turning it off outright was just juicy. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.